Hello, class. Welcome to lesson 14 in Unit 5. All right, so today we're going to be talking about distance between hurdles. You can see here on the picture, we have an example of a track in which there are runners who are in a hurdling race. And what you can notice here, these are the hurdles that they're going to jump over. And you can see that they're not aligned like straight across, right? You can see this hurdle is way behind this one. And the idea is that if they're on a track and they're making turns around the track, the person that's on the inside lane doesn't have nearly as far to go as someone who is on the outside. So if you're all the way over here, you have a much longer path to take. And so because of that, they give them a little bit of a head start to try to even things up. And so they've done calculations and they figured out what is needed to make it fair. So the person on the outside, longer way to go, but they get to start further up and so on. Here, we want to think about a situation in which there are 10 equally spaced hurdles on a racetrack. The first hurdle is 13.72 meters from the start line. So we can think of that as like the first hurdle. Okay, and then the final hurdle is 14.02 meters from the finish line. So this is like the final hurdle. So we want to keep that in mind as we look at what's happening in the problem here. So they want us to first draw a diagram that shows the hurdles on the racetrack and then label all the measurements. So when you look at the way it's set up here, your diagram can look a lot of different ways. There's no need to make it really pretty or really, stylish or anything. It just needs to cover a few basic facts that are given to you here. So I have an example of one already ready to go down below. So let me pull that up so I can show you. So here is an example of what you could have done for your diagram. Now, the important parts to have are 10 hurdles for one, right? This is there 10 equally spaced hurdles. So this is going to show 10 hurdles. If you count across, there's 10 of them there, right? And then it's also important to show that we have a start line and there's a little bit of a gap before the first hurdle, and then a finish line, and there's a little bit of a gap between the last hurdle and the finish line. So that's what your diagram should show. You can show it in your own way that you're comfortable with, but somehow we just need it to show that. And then we need to go ahead and label. So it says the first hurdle is 13.27 meters from the start line. So here's the start line. So then we need to go in here and we need to label this area here 13.72 meters. And I'm going to stretch this out. All right, so 13.72 meters, that's the distance that is between the first hurdle and the start line. Oops, I didn't do that. So okay, so then the last point that we know is that the final hurdle is 14.02 meters from the finish line. So here's the finish line. So let's label this 14.02 meters. All right, and so that's labeled now. So let's go ahead and get into solving some questions about this. So the first question is, how far are the hurdles from one another? Well, let's think about what else do we know here. So we know we have 10 hurdles. Okay, we know that much. We need to think also, how long is the entire racetrack? Okay, so if the entire racetrack is 110 meters, okay, we can think in terms of this is all 110 meters. So I'm going to draw a straight line and we're going to show the entire track here is 110 meters. Okay, so that's the entire thing. So if the entire thing is 110 meters, okay, and we're going to see how far it is between the hurdles, okay, we first need to be aware of we want to know how far this is, because there's 10 hurdles through here, okay, and so how far is this? Because if we can figure out how far this is, then we can divide this up by how many ever segments there are. Okay, and as it turns out, if there's 10 hurdles, there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 segments or sections. So if we can take this measurement and divide it by 9, then we'll know how far apart it is between each hurdle. But we need to first know what this measurement is. So it's not 110 meters, right? The whole thing is 110 meters, but we have to subtract this and this. We have to cut both of those parts out. So what I like to do is I like to think about how much total am I going to have to subtract. I'm going to have to take 13.72 out and 14.02 out. So I need to subtract both of those. So when I think about that, if it's going to be, I'm going to take 14.02, and then I'm also going to have to subtract out 13.72. So 13.72. So even though we are subtracting these from 110 meters, the purpose of adding them here is so we can see how much total we're going to end up subtracting. So we've got to first get the total that we're going to subtract, and then we subtract. So 2 plus 2, that's 4. 0 plus 7 is 7. Bring down your decimal point. 4 plus 3 is 7. 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, so 27.74 is what we need to subtract. So 27.74, let's go ahead and see what that's going to be when we subtract that from the 110 meters, right? So it's going to be, so 27.74, I'm going to remember that. That's what we're going to subtract from 110 meters. So it's going to be 110 minus 27.74. Okay, and now it's important that we get this set up properly with our decimal points, right? Notice the decimal point is here, and we don't have a decimal point up here, so that means it's at the end. So we're gonna have two blank spots here. We're gonna have to add in zeros for both of these here. Okay, so the idea here is we have 0 minus 4. We are going to have to borrow, right? So we're just going to borrow from all of this. This is going to, instead of being like 1,100, we can think about it as being 900, or excuse me, 1,099. So let's go ahead and cross all this out. Okay, and let's make this 9, 9. I know this is actually going to be 10. We didn't have to cross out the first one, but this is actually 10. All right, so when we go through here, this now becomes 10. So 10 minus 4 is 6. 9 minus 7 is 2. Bring down the decimal point. 9 minus 7, 2. And then 10 minus 2, this is what this is 10 minus 2 is 8. Okay, so 82.26 is how far this is. So I'm going to go ahead and label this. The hurdles, we're dealing with 82.26 meters is how far it is from the first hurdle to the last hurdle. Okay, so if we have that in mind, we then want to see what the distance is between the hurdles. That's the idea here that we need to find out. So if the entire distance is 82.26, we're going to be dividing that up into the 9 segments we talked about. So this problem we're doing division. It's going to be 82.26 divided by 9, right? It's important you get that clear. There are 10 hurdles, but there's 9 segments, and we're trying to figure out how far each of the segments are. All right. So let's see here. 9 cannot go into 82, but it cannot go into 8, excuse me, but it can go into 82 9 times. 9 times 9 is 81. And then so you have 82 minus 81, that's going to be 1. Okay. Also important to note, we have a decimal here. We need to go ahead and bring it up here. Okay, so bring down our 2 here. 9 goes into 12 one time. And so 12 minus 9, that's 3. Going to have to write over this value here for a second. 3, and then I have a 6 to bring down. 9 goes into 36 4 times. Okay, so that would be our reasoning, right? We figured out that this distance has to be 82.26, okay, because we're taking out the distance that we mentioned here between the start line and a hurdle and the finish line and a hurdle, and then we divided by 9 to get 9.14. Okay, so we can say 9.14 meters. Okay, so that's covers number 2. And then for number 3, we have a professional runner. Takes 3 strides between each pair of hurdles. Okay, the runner leaves the ground 2.2 meters before the hurdle, So, they're coming up on the hurdle and they're going to jump before the hurdle, right? Otherwise, they're going to run into the hurdle and knock it over, and it's going to be rough for them. So they jump 2.2 meters before, and they return to the ground 1 meter after. Right? They're clearing the hurdle, so they come down in front of it after they've jumped. Okay, so we want to picture what's happening here. So the 3 strides between each pair of hurdles, that doesn't include the part where they clear the hurdle. Okay, so they clear the hurdle with this jump here that takes this much space here, and then they do 3 strides, and then they go to clear the next hurdle. Okay, so and that means that they have been made it between the pair of hurdles. So what we know is if it's 9.14 meters between the hurdles, okay, the 3 strides that they cover doesn't include their jump. So that's important because the question they ask us is about how long are each of the runners' strides between the hurdles. So we're only talking about the strides between the hurdles, not the one where they go over it. So, but when they go over the hurdle, they're still covering some space, right? It's just not one of the strides that they're taking. So if we want to know how long each stride is, we have to take out their jump over the hurdle out of the mix. So it's not 9.14 meters that we're going to divide by 3. It's going to be how many ever meters there are after we cut out their jump. So we want to know how much space did they cover in their jump. And it's 2.2 before, and then they're kind of going over that space. And then once they get over the hurdle, it's another meter after that. So what's happening is it's actually going to be 2.2 plus 1, or 3.2 meters that we're going to subtract from this to get the distance. So it's going to be 9.14, 9 and 14 hundredths, minus 3.2. All right, and then so we can add a 0 in here. And so we're talking about this is the distance that they are going to cover with their 3 strides. So we'll find that first, and then we can divide that by 3. So 4 minus 0 is 4. 1 minus 2, oh, we can't do that. We have to borrow, right? So it's going to end up being 8. And this becomes 11. 11 minus 2 is 9. Bring down your decimal point. And then 8 minus 3 is 5. So 5.94. That is the distance that they cover in the 3 strides. And then to find out how long each of those strides are, we need to divide 5.94 by 3. So let's go ahead and do that. So 5.94 divided by 3. And let's see what we get. All right, so 3 is going to go, we're going to bring our decimal point up here first. Remember that. 3 goes into 5 one time. 1 times 3 is 3. 5 minus 3 is 2. And then we can bring down our 9. 3 goes into 29 9 times. 9 times 3 is 27. 29 take away 27 is 2. And then I can bring down this 4. And 3 goes into 24 8 times. So we're talking about 1.98 meters is how long each stride is. So we can add that in here. And that covers it. And don't forget to check out the lesson summary after.